How you doing, everybody? Listen, I hope you're all well. It's Saturday, it's the 16th of July 2011, and I didn't really intend to make a little video because there's been a lot happening, but I just wanted to see how some of the things were playing out in the world. And then what happened was they published this report here in Ireland about child abuse within the Diocese of Cloyne, which is down in the Cork area. And it was run by a man called McGee. He was a bishop, an archbishop. No, he's a bishop. And anyway, the only reason why I thought it would be sort of importance to raise it is because it gives me an opportunity to sort of voice something that I wanted to do, but I'm going to cut it short. And basically, it's about the church, about the most important Christian church in the world today, the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church, and about the 3 world wars that it's conducted, and its uniqueness in that it has conducted these 3 world wars throughout its history. And as I say, I was going to make a series of videos about this, but there's no point. I mean, you're just labouring the point. I think if anybody's interested in history, they'll look it up, and you know, that's the other thing. I mean, I may say a few inaccuracies. They're not deliberate or anything like that in making this little video, but the general thrust of what I'm about to say is basically 100% correct. You have a church dedicated to a man, the mystery man. He's a complete mystery man, this man Christ, the Nazarene. Nobody knows anything about him for about 28 years of his life on this earth. And you have this church dedicated to him completely, and they claim direct authority from him through the lineage of Peter and all the various popes, right down to this present little Nazi pope, this little German Nazi pope we have at the moment. And they claim direct lineage through these popes to this man, the Nazarene. And they believe that that gives them a preordinate position within the whole ethos of religious orders and religious beliefs within the world. And studying their history, you can see very, very clearly they have been the prime force behind 3 world wars, 3 international major world wars conducted by them, knowingly, wittingly, and with their complete support in the main. In the main. The third one, it's a debatable point. Okay? But anyway, I want to discuss these very briefly. The first war they conducted it began essentially, it lasted over approximately 2 centuries. And it began in the 11th century and it ended in the 13th century, the end of the 13th century. It started around about 1095 and it ended in 1291 approximately. And that was the Crusades. And what happened was, you had all these knights and all these, what would you call them? Yeah, social misfits that were from all over Europe who wanted to kill people for their religious beliefs, and they transported them in boatloads down the length of the Mediterranean. Brought them from all over Europe, as I say. They all ended up somewhere in Italy, probably. They all got papal blessings, and they got what's called plenary indulgences given out to them, which absolved them totally from all of their sins. That's what these people believe, that a man can stand up and absolve you totally from what you've done. You can be the biggest mass murderer in the world and he just does the icky sabo and it's all forgotten about. Alright? And they moved them from Italy down to the end of the Levant, down in the eastern end of the Mediterranean, and they conducted a war against the Muslims there for 2 centuries. And eventually they were forced out of it. Now, the reason that they did this, they'll tell you one set of things, but when you find out, when you examine it, what they were doing down there, they were down there for really one purpose and one purpose only. And the one purpose was the seizure of what they believed was their legitimate right to be there. Christian sites from 1,000 years before, when the Nazarene was walking around that place. Alright? So they wanted to seize those sites and in turn get relics, which was the most important thing what they were doing there. get relics relating to the Nazarene on his apostleship and bring them back to Europe and sell them and consolidate their power within Italy, within Rome. That's essentially what they were doing. And in order to do that, they made an unholy alliance with a crowd called the Knights Templar. And out of them comes modern day banking, what we know as modern day banking. Because they did the business with the tally sticks and all that. Tally sticks are the first proper ordered money, system of money that we have in the Western, in Western, you know, developed societies. So, as I say, that went on for 200 years, and hundreds of thousands of people lost their lives. Hundreds of thousands of people lost their lives in the name of the Nazarene. Because this was a war conducted by Christians against Muslims. The Christians landed with the Knights Templar and the Crusaders. The Muslims didn't invade the West. No. It's very simple. They arrived down with their shiploads of men for one purpose and one purpose only: money, power. Okay? And as I say, they were all absolved from their sins. And that went on for basically the best part of 2 centuries, 200 years. Okay? And then eventually what happened was they ran up against a mighty guy called Saladin, who was ruthless. He was ruthless, super ruthless guy. And he headed up the Muslim crowd. And they were driven out of the Levant eventually at the end of the 13th century, after much to and fro and all that. Eventually they left. It wasn't worth it. They reckoned they'd got enough of the relics they needed to sell for indulgences and all that sort of nonsense. It's all based on money. Within the Catholic ethos, once you've money, you can do everything and anything. Just ask Rupert Murdoch about that. Anyway, the next thing then we move, so that was the first World War they conducted. It was a big international war, hundreds of thousands of people killed, probably many millions maimed and injured. And then we move on from that into the second part. And the second war was the Inquisition. Alright? And not only was it about money, but it had big sexual overtones, huge sexual overtones. And what it was about essentially, it was the Roman Catholic Church making a massive statement. And the statement was as follows: we are governed by canon law, and our law, canon law, the law of the Roman Catholic Church, is superior to any man-made law, because we claim that the law that we have, canon law, is given to us directly by the Nazarene. Okay, so you had that going on. And that essentially started, there was seemingly 4 aspects of this Inquisition, the Spanish Inquisition, medieval Inquisition. Anyway, ended up, it started off, as I say, at the end of the 12th, beginning of the 13th century. And it ended in 1860 approximately. And what it consisted of basically was, it was a war conducted against young women and old women. And anybody who had money within the Catholic order, within Western Europe, that they felt they could seize the money by claiming that he was a heretic, or he or she was a heretic. And they were tortured in the most abominable manner, these people. But a lot of it was conducted by the Catholic Church with the by the Dominican order. It was the Dominican order were given this power. By total and utter authority of the Pope, total blessing and everything else, they were able to take people, torture them, whip them, flog them, burn them alive, you name it, do it. And all in the church's name, for the great and the good of the church, all in the name of the Nazarene. This has all been done. All of this stuff has been done in the name of the Nazarene. You must not forget this. And this, like the first war, it was conducted totally and utterly ordered from Rome. And the second was the same. It was totally and utterly ordered from Rome, from the Vatican, from the Pope. No archbishop ordered up the Inquisition. No, no. Those canon bulls that were handed out, the power, the authority was given by the Pope, signed off by Pope after Pope after Pope to the Dominican orders. And it was carried out in the most ruthless and satanic, that's the only way you could describe it, the most ruthless and satanic manner you could come across. So there's the second one. And that went on, as I say, from the end of the 12th century up until around about 1860. And as I say, it was mostly conducted against young girls in their puberty, and old women. And there was an overtone then of men, influential men within society, that they could seize their property and seize whatever money they have if they deemed them to be heretics or they were in any way deviant from whatever the Roman Catholic Church taught and believed and thought. Okay? And all it was about was dominance. That's all it was about. It was about them imposing their power and their will on civic authority throughout the Western Hemisphere. So you had civic and governmental authority within Western governments, and you had canon law being imposed from above. So, and that takes us on to the Third World War. So we have two world wars, and that takes us on to the Third World War. And this Third World War, from the earliest records that they have in the Vatican, it's obviously been going on for a long, long time, but the earliest records date from around about the 1640s, 1650s. And we've discussed this before on various videos. And it's an order called the Piarist Order. Sorry, the Piarist Order. And they were stood down in Rome. And their crime was buggery and sodomy of young children under their care. They were an educational order right across Europe. And the whole order was stood down because what they were about was so open and flagrant and defiled ordinary people. And ordinary people went and complained to directly to the Vatican, and they were forced to stand this order down. It was the most popular order at the time in the Western world. It was more important than the Jesuit, or it was the most important order, probably outside the Jesuits and maybe the Dominicans and you know, one or two key orders within the Catholic Church. But this is a highly important order. And we've already discussed it. I put the little link up there and you can have a look at the book, which is done by a leading Roman Catholic theologian, discussing why the order was stood down. So what you have is, you've got from the middle of the 17th century, you've had a war conducted, a war of buggery and corruption against the youth, children, little girls and little boys, by the priests and their acolytes within the Catholic Church. Against innocent children, in the main against innocent children. And nothing has been done about it. Absolutely nothing. And we see the product of it today. And it then brings us on to the third thing, which I'll deal with later, which is really to do with bullying, because that's all it is. That's all this is. This is thuggery and bullying on an international order. But that, from the third point of view of the actual priests and their minions conducting this war, this open war against young children throughout Western society, and now throughout the world at large, can you imagine on a day-to-day basis what must be going on in places like India and South America and Africa? Can you imagine where you have young children who can't speak and can't articulate what's happening to them? Can you imagine what must be going on? All this in the name of the Nazarene. All this in the name of the Nazarene. I have no doubt that should the Nazarene reappear today, he'd be back down in the Vatican tomorrow morning. He'd be in the Vatican tomorrow morning, sitting on another big stool beside the Pope, telling him he's done so wonderful in his name. All this is all wonderful in his name. This is a total, this church. But anyway, that's not the sin. The sin is not the priests, nor their buddies, buggering and sodomizing and corrupting young children. That has never been the sin. The sin has been the princes of the church, right up to the Pope, knowing all about it and covering it up and telling them their interpretation. Again, it's the same thing. It came out in this Clown's report during the week that canon law takes precedence over civil law within Western society, as far as these priests and these bishops and these archbishops and these cardinals and this Pope is concerned. So this has been going on. It's still going on. As I speak today, as I speak to you today, thousands and thousands of children are going to be raped and sodomized all over this world in the name of the Nazarene by these Roman Catholic priests. This has all been done in the name of a church. There's no other church that I know in the world that has that level of corruption that runs from the bottom of it right up to the top. Right up to the top. And at the end of the day, it's all about money. It's all about money and power. They are continually making a statement. They are saying to the civic authorities throughout the Western world, our law takes precedence over your law. Your law plays second fiddle to our law. Canon law, our law. And we see the product of their law. The product of their law is tens of thousands of children whose lives will be forever destroyed through corruption and through touching these people. They touch young children and corrupt them. Imagine you have a bishop. Imagine a bishop kissing the forehead of an 18-year-old man, young man, and telling them that he had dreams about him. This is a bishop. This is one of the princes of the church. Imagine if that happened to me. Imagine if a young man went to the guards in Ireland and made a complaint that I kissed his forehead and told him that I was having dreams about him. What would happen to me? I would get 5 years. That's what would happen. I would get a minimum of 5 years in the Pokey Joe for some sort of ancient English law to do with perversion. They dream it up or concoct it up. Would be viewed as technical assault and all sorts of stuff. And I would get 5 years. But this bishop and these people, they can do all that willy-nilly. Nobody wants to address it. It's just, it's symptomatic of what has our society where it is today. It's morally, ethically, financially, socially corrupt up to here. We're all swimming in sewage in Ireland. We're all swimming in sewage in Ireland. And nobody wants to speak out about it. Nobody wants to speak out about it. That's all. We talk more.